let's talk about the first second round series that was set. The Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Indiana Pacers. This series, I was going through it, and we'll have, for anyone who's unfamiliar with how we do previews, like we'll have a tactical question, narrative question, and then our X factors. I was going through this series trying to figure out, like, okay, what is going to be just the defining example from it? I think ultimately both the offenses are going to be fine. And so it led me to believe, well, like, how are these two teams going to, like, what is the interplay defensively? And I think my biggest question, it was, I'm still narrowing down between the two, but I kind of want to know, like, is Cleveland going to get caught up in trying to go after Tyrese Halliburton a little too much, or not too, like they did it to Tyler Hero in the first round. Tyrese Halliburton had some really big defensive plays against the Bucks, but he is someone you could go after.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it works. How do the Pacers counter that? And if it's like not working as the Cavs, then where do you go from that? Because you don't want to, okay, logically, it makes sense to go after Tyrese Halliburton. But if that's not working, like, what is the counter to that then?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm glad that I'm glad you're kind of like trying to work through the salient points for this series, because I had a hard time just kind of zeroing in on anything that felt like, oh, here's the key to the series. Because really, like, broadly, maybe tell me if you agree with this. Like, sure, there's differences, but like the Cavs and Pacers are their offense first teams that, just like when you're analyzing a series they're in, generally it's like, well, how does Team X stop Cleveland, or how does Team Y stop the Pacers, like that kind of thing. And then like the defense just is what it is now, because both are just good offenses, are defined by their offense anyway. Certainly Cleveland more so, they're the best in the league. It's, you do look more at the other end. So like for me, I wonder, so just to get the numbers out there, on the season, the Cavs defensive rating was better than Indy's, but the Pacers was better after the All-Star break by a decent margin. They were 8th in defensive efficiency. The Cavs were 14th. Some of that might be the Cavs took the foot off the gas because they had the number 1 seed and that type of thing. But like these are still these are good defenses, and the Pacers have been better than good lately, and the Cavs were better than good over the bulk of the year. Specifically, though, for the Pacers, I wonder if it's going to be possible for them to run, because transition is important for both of these teams, but more so, I think, for the Pacers offense. The Cavs half-court defense is 5th in the league. The Pacers is 16th. So if you do get into a bogged down kind of setup, I think that favors the Cavs, whose half-court defense is just better. And I think that means that the Pacers' ability to run, which is always compromised in the playoffs anyway, matters a little more. So tactically, I'm just looking at, can Indiana like get the chaotic, like, swing stuff that comes off of like transition missteps, or like the defense not being set. If so, that's not a player specific thing. I think your Halliburton point is that's my Cleveland tactical thing, is like, how do we maximize going at Halliburton, and then like, what do the Pacers do? Where do they hide him? That kind of thing.
It does seem like, too, that getting the defense set is more important for Indy's defense than it would be for Cleveland's, to where it's like Indy needs to score to help out its offense more than Cleveland does. Probably, I just think, with the number of buttons they could press, but I don't even know. And with Halliburton, we don't have like the sample size from the regular season when you look at some of the Pacers injuries, also including Halliburton not playing, I think, in at least one of the games with Cleveland. Like, what is the go-to defender on Halliburton? Are you going to give Mitchell a chance at all? Do you default to DeAndre Hunter? It doesn't look like, in theory, it should be Isaac Okoro, but he might not be part of the plans. If you're going to play, like, if you're putting Hunter on Halliburton, this has to be a Dean Wade series then, right? Because you need someone else to, like, who's going to be able to defend like the rest of the attack. But I've also gone back and forth, like, on the Pacer side of this. In theory, is this a better matchup than people are crediting? Because of all, like, Cleveland's best players, not one of them is that apex predator wing, as you call them. And so, that's, in theory, that's Indy's biggest defensive weakness. They have Aaron Nesmith, they have Nembhard, but those guys aren't necessarily big enough to go. And yeah, okay, Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland are fantastic, but Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nembhard being able to go at that, maybe you sprinkle in a little bit of Ben Shepherd there. The push and pull here for this series for me tactically, and then even, you mentioned sort of like the half court with Indy. I think Pascal Siakam becomes huge there.
Yes.
We're going to see a lot of Evan Mobley on them, but like he gives them sort of that change of cadence, like on ball, half court, like, and he could punish mismatches in the post, but like he can also get going downhill and change direction. So this feels like but Tyrese Halliburton's always going to be the most important star, but I think you're not going to be able to get away with, as we kind of saw at points in the Pacers Bucks series. I don't think you can get away from Pascal Siakam being as involved. Like he needs to be involved more than he was at points in that Bucks series.
Yeah, I think that's right, and part of that's because he can make Garland or Mitchell. Those are guys. I think if you can engineer a switch so Siakam gets it at the elbow against one of those two guys somehow, then like okay, we can. Tying back to like, are the Pacers going to be able to score enough in half court sets? Like that's probably one of the ways it's going to have to happen is through Siakam against mismatches. If you can engineer that kind of thing, I mean, I feel pretty confident saying there's going to be a lot of like, whether it's in like transition or semi-transition, just like a lot of pre-switching, a lot of like, because this feels like a matchup hunty kind of series to me. And I think like, now because the Pacers have Halliburton, you would say like, well, then the Cavs are, but like it's not like, I guess Mobley getting getting downhill against Halliburton in a switch somehow. I might be a problem, but Siakam going against either of Cleveland's two guards, if you can make that happen, if you can get Mobley away from him somehow, that's pretty interesting to me. I don't know. I think odds are like this may just end up being an up-tempo series, and if it is like, if this is just chaos and up and down and the scores are in the 130s, does it feel weird to say like that might actually be best case for Indiana, even though they're going against the best offense in the league? Like it's weird that like the style of play that Indiana needs to sort of make happen would also seem to play into Cleveland's hands a little bit, which is kind of scary for the Pacers.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it that way. So I guess it could. Yeah, it's like the other. By the way, the other thing too is so both of these teams technically start two bigs, and they're like some of the least impressive rebounding teams
Right.
in the league, like and the playoffs. So what does that sort of look like? And like, do we see with Indy? Is there less Jarris Walker or Obi Toppin because they want Thomas Bryant size? It like in moments where it's Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley, or is it you're looking at Cleveland? It's well, there's going to be a lot of one big minutes too, so you don't necessarily need to pull that lever. I also think Miles Turner defended really well in that Bucks series. And so the idea of Evan Mobley getting downhill is sort of to me like, well, that can like cause a lot of havoc. But it feels like after he and Siakam and even Nesmith spending a lot of time on Giannis went up against Giannis, who like was dominant. He was Giannis,
Right.
but like having to go up against Evan Mobley or Jared Allen just doesn't seem as intimidating.
Well, the thing too, like, yeah, we should talk about the Giannis parallel because then it's like, okay, well, Giannis got all he could eat and Indy was having three guys wall up the whole time and Giannis still got his. And outside of Gary Trent going nuclear for like one full game and then, I don't know, like another 12-minute stretch, like, the Bucks didn't really have to pay for that. I mean, if you're walling up against a Mobley drive, for example, which like you could imagine the Cavs at points trying to get Mobley in like the Giannis role where he's just going downhill and it's like, okay, stop me. It's certainly like you can't get away with devoting tons of help to that if you're Indiana because Mitchell's out there, Garland's out there, Strus is out. Like the Cavs will make you pay for loading up to stop or to try to protect the paint, I think, against like a driving forward like Mobley. But then like Mobley's not Giannis, obviously, so maybe you do play him more straight. I don't know. It's gonna be really interesting because I think what I do feel most confident in is the Pacers got like their first round series was more useful to them in terms of like carry forward stuff that they could use in this series than Cleveland's was because Cleveland, Bam is great, but it's like just go at hero and then stress the other defenders and you'll score plenty. And then there's not really that much you need to worry about on the other end. Like I feel like at least Indiana it was a short series too, but Indiana got a little bit of a test, specifically against someone
more for sure.
Yeah. So again, especially against we saw Giannis. Like we're never gonna see like a downhill force like that the rest of the playoffs. So like, okay, we handled that. Great. Like maybe we're ready,
But I guess to your point though, like being able to attempt to wall off Giannis and then not have to worry about the Bucks really capitalizing on it, you're just not going to be able to do that with Cleveland supporting cast.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. So maybe just overall, well, tell me what you think about this. I kind of imagine the both bigs are going to guard both bigs. Like I don't think Mobley's going to start on Halliburton or anything like wild like
Actually,
that.
Tony East of Locked On Pacers has mentioned this a bunch, and the Cavs did play zone a lot during the regular season, but like the Pacers will sometimes struggle against zone, even though in theory they have the personnel like to bust it up a little bit. So I'm wondering then, do we just even see a ton of zone from Cleveland in this series too?
Yeah, it's possible. Especially if if the Pacers are successful kind of getting the blender running, which they can do against a lot of teams, and they did against Milwaukee. Do you have like a narrative thing you're focused on for the series on either side?
No, I should say I force myself to focus on something, but this doesn't feel like because if you look at it through almost the lens of, well, which team has more at stake, I guess is what I'm looking at. I guess it has to be the Cavs, just because in theory they were so good during the regular season that it would be seen as a disappointment if they didn't make the conference finals. And I think a lot of people are going to end up picking them in 5, especially if they only look at, let's say, Indy's season-long performance rather than what they were like over the final 50 games or post-Nemhard return from injury. But like that's just I was looking at it and wondering, well, which team does this like series mean more for in terms of a referendum? And is it actually Indy? Because like, what else is Cleveland supposed to do if they didn't win this season? So I guess maybe would that make the referendum bigger on them? But I think that this is really going to be a referendum on, all right, well, how close are the Pacers? Like they're going up at like this is if they make the conference finals this year because they beat the Cavs, that is I don't care what happens in the next round. Like that's something you read into because this Cleveland team is fucking awesome.
Yeah, I think that's right about on the Pacers side of it. That was kind of what I focused on too. This like, if you beat this Cleveland team, then it's like very much vindication's not quite the right word because like, you beat a Bucks team that just had Giannis and Lillard got hurt, and it was like there's another asterisk on that one. But beating this Cleveland team would just be like, okay, we don't get to talk about the asterisk or the sketchiness of last year's run. We don't get it's like this would be a real like legit era defining, like there was a before and an after for this version of the Pacers kind of moment. So that has to sort of be it. Also, like will we continue to see Halliburton just take this? It's not totally fair, but like kind of a heel turn where it's like he's just talking the whole time. Is it just confined to the Bucks, or will the Pacers kind of really will they show the same kind of bravado against Cleveland, and will that kind of come to be their, how we think of them? But I think we're overthinking it if we say like the Pacers have more at stake, because it is just like Cleveland has to win this series. It just has to.
I do believe that whoever loses will immediately be named as a dark horse Giannis Antetokounmpo trade destination. Where it's, what if Cleveland just traded Garland and Jared Allen to get Giannis because the Bucks want to stay good? And then with the Pacers, it's they have a bunch of picks, they have some young players, they have some salary to get there. It'd be a little complicated, but I think that's not a narrative I'm watching for. But I expect whichever team loses to be named as like they're a dark horse to get Giannis.
Yeah, I think if we're just forget this series, every team that loses, who could really help them? I think just it ties back to what I said too from the Cleveland side about like they're going to have more of a test. I think Kenny Atkinson did not have to like make a lot of adjustments against Miami. I think we'll see like hopefully the Pacers push the Cavs enough to where we get to see, because I think we both have Atkinson as coach of the year, and
yeah,
I think like this will be kind of the first opportunity we'll have to see like, oh, what does he do if things go sideways in a game 2, or like what different levers do the Cavs have to pull? Because like they just, they didn't really have to. So I think we'll learn quite a bit about the Cavs in this one.
I wonder if, because he was playing, and probably there were some games where it looked like it was 10, but it's probably like 8 or 9 guys. Does the rotation like truncate any further in this one? Will also be because like the depth is this not a Ty Jerome series? For some reason, when you look at like some of the way the Pacers second units play, like is this going to be a Ty Jerome series? But yeah, that's a really good question. Who are let's start with Cavs X Factor. Who you got?
I mean, I was struggling between all of the guys that this was the same case in the last round. I think I don't remember exactly what we said. I just ended up with Strus. I think he's gonna have like I feel like that's where Halliburton's gonna go defensively, right? Like because he's not getting Garland or Mitchell, and then he's obviously not guarding up. So can Strus make him pay? Can Strus make him does that mean Strus becomes a screener more often just to have Halliburton involved in stuff? Does he make sure that Halliburton, has to run around? Will he be a movement shooter, like that kind of thing? And also like the other four guys on the Cavs starting lineup, they can't be X factors because they're all too good and they're all too much of like known commodities. But Dean Wade was a thought, just because he is like the embodiment of an X factor for this team. But I think for me, it's Strus. Who did you have?
I thought about Dean Wade too, but I'm always constantly, maybe that's what it typifies an X factor. I'm always constantly wondering, well, how much is he actually going to play?
Right. Yeah. And is this a series for him? Like, I mean, maybe.
I kind of think it's going to have to be, but that's because in part my X factor is DeAndre Hunter. I think he's going to see a bunch of time against Tyrese Halliburton, and it'll be interesting to see if Tyrese Halliburton gets cross matched on Hunter, if they decide, well, that's actually where, if he's playing with the starters, let's say, like, well, that's where you're going to put Tyrese Halliburton anyway. How do you feel about DeAndre Hunter as a screener? Or how do you feel about DeAndre Hunter attacking Tyrese Halliburton? That I think I'm probably overthinking it offensively, but defensively, I think that he is going to spend a ton of time on Halliburton. I'll just be curious to see how he stands up against that. And then the trickle down effect of that, though, is then doesn't this need to become sort of a deep, because how much do you want? Like maybe Max Strus can do some stuff against Siakam, or like you're not going to want to have Sam Merrill on the court because he's had to play. If he's going to play with the two small guards, he's technically the 3 on offense. But if you're putting Hunter on Halliburton, like, well, what is he, the 4 on defense then? So that gets tricky.
Yeah, I do think like Hunter's a good pick because normally you'd say like, I think the Cavs are going to have to play Okoro, right? Like, because maybe that's the guy you have Chase Halliburton around. It's like Hunter needs to be 90% of Okoro defensively. And then you get the bonus of like, oh God, he can just punish any small guard that he gets switched onto offensively.
Your Pacers X factor is?
I think I'm going to go Nembhard. He's
Johnny
just
Murphy was robbed, but carry on.
If Johnny Murphy plays in this series, something happened that was extreme one way or the other. He's just going to he's going to be on Garland or Mitchell every second he's on the floor. And it's just like, he's going to have no rest whatsoever. And I do think the Pacers are also going to need him to score. You can make the argument that he's too good to be an X factor, but I think his job is so important that he could be the non-star that defines the series, I think.
I actually kind of have the same take about Aaron Nesmith, to where I think defensively, okay, Nembhard, we know he's going to defend like one of the 2 toughest perimeter covers. Nesmith will spend a ton of time on the other one. You're probably also going to see him on Evan Mobley at points. And then offensively, I think you're going to try and get away with putting Garland or Mitchell on him at points. And can Nesmith and that might be part of, or can he be part of busting the zone where it's like, especially the Bucks series, he had some really like heady drives where he's getting his shoulder into dudes he just couldn't finish on them. And so if he's able to do that on offense, that's sort of a gimme, because it's like, it just pulls like some options out of Cleveland's belt with, well, then how do we go about accounting for both Siakam and Halliburton?
Right.
And is he someone who, because like the Pacers don't necessarily, I would love to see the data on like the 2-man game between Siakam and Halliburton. Seems like it hits its peak in fourth quarters, and like they kind of try and conserve it throughout the rest of the game as sort of a cheat code. Well, you need someone else to be doing things like to preserve, like, so Miles Turner, like popping and hitting shots there, or Andrew Nembhard being able to create off the dribble and on the inside, TJ McConnell being a zone buster or something. It's like Nesmith could factor into that a little bit. I think he's just going to play a ton, and that Cleveland will try and get away with putting one of their quote unquote defensive liabilities on him, even though like it just wouldn't like Mitchell. I wouldn't shock me if he was just matched up with Garland at point. Mitchell. It wouldn't shock me if Mitchell defended Garland.
No, I know who you meant. I think on the Nesmith front too, I think one of the things we've seen throughout these playoffs, particularly because there have been a lot of like matchups so far where there's been a huge size discrepancy, or there's been a lot of zone played like as a result of that. And one of the things that like we don't see as much in the regular season that's an issue now is when you have a bunch of weird cross matches, or you have a bunch of funky zones being played, like opportunities for offensive rebounds there's just more of them. And so like if Nesmith is getting guarded by a big, or if it's a weird zone and Nesmith is being like shaded away from, or something, anything like that, could he just go crash and get like a couple extra possessions, per game? Like that kind of thing. I just feel like that's among the things that change in the playoffs, and these in particular, the value of offensive rebounding has kind of taken on like a new level. And if you are someone that's getting schemed against, or like someone's hiding on you or whatever it is, like just hauling ass to the offensive boards and like, trying to get in there without being boxed out or getting forgotten about, like that could, I think this will be a fairly competitive series. So like that might matter. That might swing a game.
And to that end, what is your series prediction?
So I have to go with the Cavs. I just think the Cavs are better. I have fewer questions. The issue is how many games I'm going to go. I want to give the Pacers respect, so it can't be. I think I'm just going to go Cavs in 6, which means the Cavs have to finish it on the road. But I think they're good enough to do that.
I want Cavs in 6 as well, in part because I've been banging the Pacers drum since I decided that I was out on them too.
Yeah.
Where it's like, so all I need to do is declare myself out on a team and they'll turn things around. But I think Cleveland in 5 is going to be the most popular pick. But I really just, Indy has shown the ability to dial it up defensively over the last like now 60-ish games that I think really needs to be accounted for. And the Cavs are the Celtics. Like these would be the teams that will stress test their defense to no end. But I think Rick Carlisle has a lot of different buttons to push, and I think they're a very creative team at both ends of the floor. And if Miles Turner is going to be the version of Miles Turner defensively that we saw in the Buck series, if Cleveland decides to cater towards more one big units, do you think that favors Indy or Cleveland more?
I guess that would favor Indy, I guess. But I don't know. That's an interesting question. I hadn't really thought about that. So what's the scenario where Indiana forces the Cavs to play one big more often?
I'm not even saying it forces them, but I guess if they're doing a better job of defending the Cavs offense, where you're not either getting like as many paint touches as normal, or if like your 3-pointers aren't falling, is like, okay, we pull Allen, we put another shooter on the court, and that opens up the floor. Like the Pacers are interesting because they could downsize in response, or they could just stay the same. Like they're two bigs. It's not as just like you run into, people are concerned about this. Rudy Gobert is a bad example because his problems on offense in these situations, It's not on defense, but it's like, can you like, does that play into the Pacers' hands a little bit if you go that route, or no? Does it make it because, all right, well now Pascal Siakam is going to spend even more time, like maybe flying around with someone who's in motion or just who's more of a perimeter player?
Yeah, I don't know. I think if the Cavs take Allen off the floor, because I feel fine with Allen guarding Siakam or Turner, depending on what Cleveland wants to do with like.
The problem for Cleveland is not. Greg Anthony, I don't know if you caught it in one of the games, had like a great monologue on this about like the defense in the NBA, and you just have these 7-footers being able to keep up with all 5 positions. The problem won't be defensively for Cleveland with Mobley and Allen, if there's a problem at all.
Yeah, I think if I'm the Cavs, I guess my answer is, because if I'm the Cavs, I want Allen on the floor, because I do think he might just be someone that, controls the glass, gets a bunch of rebounds, extra points that way, kickouts, and that kind of thing. So if the Pacers have gotten Allen off the floor like more than he normally would be, that feels like a win. Because I don't think the Cavs would like elect to do that to get if the Cavs elect to do that to get the offense going, like the Pacers are doing something right.
Good point. So we both have Cavs in 6. Moral of the story.